ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו.
לחיים, לחיים.
חיים וברכה. To life and to blessings. Continuing with our discourse. So, a blessing on a mitzvah. Every blessing has the words Asher Kidishanu, but when it's for a blessing for a mitzvah, as opposed to pleasure, like I just made a blessing on the coffee for the pleasure, for the yeah, I guess you know, be qualified as in that manner. Um, so to be able to have the permission to partake in God's world, you make a blessing. Everything belongs to Him. But in that blessing, so we're not commanded. I'm not commanded to have coffee, right? It's my choice. So in those things that are of God's world, you want to take, I don't know, to partake in, not even forget about pleasure, just to partake in. So you need to make a blessing to acknowledge the source of where it comes from, right? Actually, it's interesting. The term we use is birchas hanenin. Excuse me, sorry, Michael let Liba in. Birchas hanenin, which means the blessings of pleasure. Hano means pleasure. So yeah. In other words, you want to partake of anything in this world, have pleasure from this world of anything. So yeah, make a blessing. But it's not a mitzvah. The mitzvah is to make the blessing. But what we're talking about here is when you make a blessing over a mitzvah, which means a command of God, like putting on tefillin, right? Lighting Shabbos candles. Those are commands. Although, truth is, the lighting of Shabbos candles is a rabbinic uh, legislated law. As we're learning in our Talmud class. But the rabbis have that power to legislate and to make and based on Torah. So therefore, it is as if God is commanding. In any case, the important point over here is that in the blessing for a mitzvah, as opposed to my coffee, l'chaim, we say the word asher kidishanu, that He has sanctified us with his mitzvah, with his commandment, vitzivanu, and commanded us. So there's two ideas here that we've been sanctified through the mitzvah, sanctified kiddishanu, like the word kaddish, right, the morning's prayer, or kiddush, which is Friday night prayer. Right, the same idea. It means to have an upgrade, right? To be elevated, to be elevated um, to a divine level. So that's called halah, upwards, right? And then vitzivanu, that he commanded us, meaning to bring down the light of God into this world. So the upgrade is beyond this world, transcending creation, and that's what the mitzvah does. It's just like such an important idea that we are not limited to the human condition. And at the same time, it's Ivanu that there's the us in the human condition, that we've been commanded as an individual to bring down godliness into the human condition. So, as we ended that, why do we mention about being uplifted beyond the human condition? And after all, the command is about me doing the act of the mitzvah. That's really what it comes down to. Because we should never forget that it's his command, it's his mitzvah. The way the way God is separate, transcendent of this world. And never forget that there's that transcendence. Yeah. And that transcendence comes to us from the power of the Torah, being the Torah is God's wisdom, which of course transcends human wisdom. It's interesting. We we say the same word, wisdom. So, like, we think there's a correlation. Just using the word wisdom because we have no other. We have to use human language. So it's the closest thing that we can use that is in the human condition. But God's wisdom is not like ours. It's totally beyond it. It's infinite. It's one with Him. And He gives that to us, that our finite intelligence can understand, appreciate, and make it a part of our intelligence, make it part of our understanding, make it part of the way we see the world, right? And this is the idea of Torah, that it draws down the pleasure, right? This was all kind of um, I'm going to call it digression is the right word, because it all adds to our understanding. But where we're going with this is the difference of Torah being pleasure, right? If you recall that the tree, a fruit-bearing tree, is a metaphor for Torah. Fruits are about the pleasure, as opposed they're eaten more out of pleasure than it is out of sustaining one, even though you got a lot of people in nutrition, professionals in nutrition tell you eat a lot of vegetables and fruit. So first of all, we're not talking about vegetables here, we're talking about fruit, right? As opposed to grain, which is more essential, even though, again, a lot of people might say differently today, but we're going into a traditional understanding of food. You're right. Fruit, when you make hamotzi, right, just to bring out, halachically, hamotzi, which is on bread, when you break bread, so it includes everything in the meal except for wine because of the importance of wine. You have to make a separate blessing on wine. So, for example, you know, you drink water in the middle of your meal, or you have chicken, or you have fish in the middle of your meal. And even though that's like, your highlight of the meal, you broke bread, you made the blessing, Hamotzi Lechem Min Aretz, Um, you you don't make a blessing on all those other foods because it incorporates it all. Because bread is the staff of life, right? As a right staff of life. Now, in that meal, at the end of the meal, if you're going to have fruit, you make a blessing on it. Why? Because it's not considered part of the nourishing or filling part of the meal. It's the aftertaste. It's like, have a good taste afterwards that you're left with, something, whether it be sweet or whatever, whatever it is. Bringing out the idea of that fruit, is not about sustaining, it's about pleasure. That's how it's appear. That's how it's, halachically based on the idea. Okay, so therefore, the the metaphor of a tree is pleasure, as we said, pleasure in the study of Torah that I hope we're having now, l'chaim, and of course that pleasure comes because we're understanding God's wisdom, and just the notion that we have access to God's wisdom, that itself, is wow. So this is the idea of Torah that draws down the pleasure, and pleasure is something, in a sense, it's beyond, because it touches the core of an individual. That pleasure is not just in Torah, but it's also in accepting the yoke of doing the mitzvah. So here we had in the blessing, Asher Kidishanu, that God sanctifies us. He rises us up beyond the human condition, right? Whoa, we, whatever we're going through as humans, well, the mitzvah, God's mitzvahs are beyond. His Torah is beyond. It's divine pleasure that we can have. And now we can draw that in and not just have that pleasure in the study of Torah, but also in the doing and the fulfillment of a mitzvah. So let's flesh this out a bit. Okay. The fulfillment of mitzvahs in a manner as that we are like a servant fulfilling the king's command, right? Right, which means we are nullified to the master, God, the king, right? Is because the idea of a mitzvah, of the command to the person, is that you are a person, an autonomous individual, right? That is, you sense your separateness, and therefore you're not feeling the divine pleasure. When you feel your separateness from the divine, right? Which there's the place for that when you are doing the mitzvah. It's you doing the act, right? Whatever God needs. So it's not about you engaged in Torah study like now and having the divine pleasure, right? Nonetheless, Nonetheless, even though one feels their own autonomous being in doing the mitzvah, but we're nullified, we are self-effacing to God, right? Me, I'm feeling me, and yet I give myself over to the mitzvah of God. Now, through drawing down Torah, which is beyond the command of the person in doing the mitzvah, but we draw down what we're doing now and we bring that into the mitzvah that we do in a manner of, doing what you got to do because God commanded it. In other words, we're doing God's thing after all, remember, right? Because the Torah says serve God. So guess what? We serve. So, but what we're doing is drawing down Torah into the mitzvah. And therefore, that gives us a certain feeling that the fact that I am this autonomous individual, right, is only for one reason, to fulfill the divine purpose. There's purpose in me, being this, autonomous being. And through this, that we that we accept the duty of what we got to do. It's really what it comes down to. We fully accept it, entirely accept that I'm here to fulfill the divine plan. And the fact that I am this autonomous person is only to fulfill the divine plan. Not that I have, as an autonomous individual, an autonomous agenda. I have my agenda, but you know what? Listen, I have no choice. There's a king that I gotta do, so I do. But I'm not really. It's not what I'm into. It's not what I'm interested in. That's what the king wants. So I just fulfill whatever I got to do. But really, I have my autonomous agenda. No, as an autonomous individual, we don't have an autonomous agenda. Our whole being, our whole purpose is just to fulfill the intent of why God created me. So since we have that notion, um, therefore, the fact that I am is not a contradiction. So that will then infuse me with a divine pleasure. Well, I'll let that sit with me. In other words, uh, like it's very easy to feel like I'm just a speck in the universe. So that's insignificance. Or to feel that I feel my significance. I feel my um, value. And what's your value? That you are an integral part individually, autonomously, to fulfill the divine plan. And that's your whole being. It's not like No, that's everything. And therefore, even though there's a sense of selfhood over here, what is myself? Is this, and therefore having a divine pleasure, even though there's the me here. How can I have divine pleasure if I'm sensing, you know, me? It's not a contradiction. Because your whole being is only to fulfill the divine plan. That brings a sense of pleasure. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. I hope I brought that out clear. But just to look at ourselves there, right? Because we learned that from the perspective of Torah, there's no world. There's nothing. It's only the divine. And that's uplifting. That's like Asher Kiddishanu B'Mitzvah, like we're uplifted beyond. And that's a great pleasure. But now what we're doing is bringing it into, you know, kind of the reality of being down here. So being down here and being the servant of here to serve, that there's a me here serving, but the whole me is only but to fulfill the divine intent. So I'm not uplifted right now. So when you're learning Torah in and of itself, right? So I think we feel uplifted. That's why you come back, right? But that uplifting now, bring it down into the routine of life, the mitzvah of the day, and to yet have that pleasure, that upliftedness in the routine of the mitzvahs of the day. That's a much more difficult thing. It's easier in when we're learning. We're learning divine wisdom, God's wisdom, Torah. So of course we're going to be in a different, in a different frame. All, well, we feel right now. Hopefully, you feel like you look down at life, and it's like, oh, that's petty. But then we're going to finish now, and then you might get in, but you get back down there where it's petty. But when you understand that your whole being is only in the service of God to fulfill the divine plan, my whole being is that. And then you engage in your day and the mitzvahs of the day, you can draw down that pleasure in just being you and this and the servant that you are, the fact that you are your whole being is to fulfill God's eternal plan. Psh, wow, powerful.